Welcome to Tales of Kind Souls, where stories of drama, mystery, and transformation come alive. If you enjoy captivating tales that take you on an emotional journey, make sure to stay with us until the very end. You won't want to miss how this one unfolds. Today's story is about a woman who took something that wasn't hers, and how her actions changed the course of an entire airline company. It begins with a single act of deception, but spirals into a web of consequences no one could have predicted. It all started at an international airport on a bright Monday morning. The terminal buzzed with hurried footsteps, rolling suitcases, and boarding announcements echoing through the air. Among the hundreds of travelers that day was Amelia, a single woman in her early 30s. She was sharp, ambitious, and unafraid of bending rules when life didn't go her way. Amelia had grown tired of living an ordinary life. She wasn't poor, but she wasn't wealthy either. She worked freelance jobs, barely making enough to keep her small apartment. But in her mind, she was destined for more, a life of luxury, first-class flights, and recognition. So when opportunity presented itself that morning, she seized it without hesitation. As Amelia walked toward her gate, she noticed a group of airline staff in polished uniforms, guiding a tall, dignified man through the crowd. He was dressed in a tailored suit, his presence commanding respect. The whispers around him gave away his identity. Alexander Grant, the CEO of Skylux Airlines, one of the most prestigious airline companies in the world. He was supposed to board his company's flagship flight that day, a non-stop journey from New York to London. This wasn't just a routine trip. It was a publicity event for Skylux's brand new luxury fleet. Every move Alexander made was being watched by employees, journalists, and business rivals. But Alexander was running late. His phone buzzed with urgent messages, and the staff around him scrambled to organize the final details. In the chaos, Alexander stepped away briefly to answer a private call, leaving his black leather carry-on and boarding pass in the lounge. That's when Amelia saw her chance. Her eyes fell on the gleaming pass with a golden seal, Seat 1A, first-class executive suite. Without giving herself time to second-guess, she slid the boarding pass into her purse and picked up the bag. Her heart pounded, but her face remained calm as she walked toward the gate. The staff, assuming she was with the CEO's team, didn't question her. After all, who else would have access to that very specific boarding pass? In just minutes, Amelia had stolen Alexander's seat on the most important flight of the year. Inside the plane, she was treated like royalty. Champagne was offered, attendants bowed politely, and passengers whispered about who she might be. Amelia leaned back in the plush leather chair, convincing herself she deserved this moment. But what she didn't know was that her decision would have consequences far beyond a single stolen seat. Meanwhile, Alexander returned to the lounge only to discover his boarding pass and bag gone. His security team scrambled, but the plane was already boarding. By the time they realized what had happened, it was too late. The flight had taken off, without its CEO. News spread quickly. The head of Skylux Airlines had missed his own company's event. Reporters waiting in London speculated about delays, cancellations, and even scandals. Competitors mocked the situation, calling it a failure of leadership. Alexander was furious, not because of the embarrassment alone, but because someone had dared to impersonate him on his own plane. He vowed that whoever had stolen his seat would regret it. From the ground, Alexander made a bold move. He ordered the airline's London operations to halt entirely until he arrived personally. Flights were delayed, schedules were suspended, and the airline lost millions in just a matter of hours. The media called it the day Skylux was grounded. For Amelia, things grew complicated mid-flight. At first, she enjoyed the luxury. 5-course meals, a bed that converted from her seat, and the quiet prestige of traveling in absolute comfort. But the attendants soon began asking polite but probing questions. "Ms. Grant, would you like us to confirm your arrival arrangements?" One of them asked, assuming she was a relative of the CEO. Amelia panicked. She mumbled excuses, avoided too much conversation, and kept her eyes glued to the window. But suspicions grew. The staff had met Alexander dozens of times before. Why hadn't he shown up? And who exactly was this mysterious woman sitting in his reserved seat? By the time the plane landed in London, the truth was beginning to unravel. Security agents were already waiting at the terminal. Cameras flashed as Amelia stepped out, pretending to belong, only to find herself surrounded. The confrontation between Amelia and Alexander happened 2 days later in a Skylux office. She sat nervously across from the CEO, who stared at her with a mix of anger and curiosity. "You stole my identity," he said firmly. "Do you have any idea what that cost me? What it cost this company?" Amelia tried to defend herself. "I just wanted a chance to feel important, to live the life people like you take for granted." Her voice trembled, but there was a strange honesty in her words. She wasn't a criminal mastermind. She was a desperate woman who had acted recklessly. Alexander could have pressed charges. He could have destroyed her with a single phone call. But instead, he surprised everyone. "You think my life is glamorous," he said. "But you don't see the sacrifices, the sleepless nights, the weight of responsibility. You wanted a seat that wasn't yours, and now you see the burden that comes with it." Amelia lowered her gaze, ashamed. After a long silence, Alexander made a decision that no one expected. He did not have her arrested. Instead, he gave her a challenge. "If you want to feel important, earn it. Work for something greater than yourself. I'll give you one chance. Come and work with our foundation. But if you ever cross me again, there will be no forgiveness." Amelia was stunned. She had gone from stealing his seat to being offered an opportunity to change her life. Over the following months, Amelia worked with the Skylux Foundation, a branch of the company dedicated to providing scholarships and aid for underprivileged youth. She started at the bottom, making calls, sorting files, attending community events. It wasn't glamorous, but it was meaningful. For the first time, Amelia understood what true importance meant. Not wealth, not luxury, but the ability to make a difference. She grew dedicated, creative, and even earned the respect of her peers. Alexander, watching from a distance, saw something change in her. The same boldness that once led her to steal his seat now fueled her determination to help others, and slowly, a fragile trust formed between them. But the world had not forgotten the scandal. Newspapers continued to remind everyone of the woman who stole the CEO's seat. Skylux's reputation was bruised, and Alexander knew he had to address it publicly. At a grand press conference, Alexander stepped onto the stage with Amelia by his side. Gasps filled the room. Cameras clicked furiously. Everyone expected her to be denounced, humiliated, or dismissed. Instead, Alexander told the truth. He explained how Amelia had acted out of desperation, how her mistake had led to a grounding of the airline, and how that pause had forced Skylux to re-evaluate its values. "Sometimes," he said, "a company needs to be grounded, not just in the air, but in its purpose." Amelia reminded us of that, even if it wasn't her intention. Then he introduced her, not as a criminal, but as a new ambassador for the Skylux Foundation. The audience was stunned, critics were silenced, and Amelia, once ridiculed, now stood in front of the world as a symbol of redemption. Years later, people would still talk about that day, the day a single woman stole a CEO's seat and how it changed everything. Skylux Airlines became known not just for luxury, but for compassion and innovation. And Amelia, once lost in her own ambitions, found a path she had never expected, because sometimes the seat we steal isn't the one we're meant to keep, it's the one that teaches us where we truly belong. And that's the end of today's story. Thank you for joining us on Tales of Kind Souls. If this story moved you, inspired you, or kept you on the edge of your seat, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more tales that remind us of the power of choices. redemption, and second chances. Until next time, stay kind, stay curious, and keep listening, because every soul has a story worth telling.